Officers located in the parking lot, one Jason Furtado, age 41. Mr. Furtado told the responding officers that the shooter was still inside the club. Responding officers entered the club and located Mr. Brian Remy, age 66, deceased. Subsequently, or currently right after that, Warren Rescue transported Mr. Furtado to the hospital. At the same time, transmission was received from the Bristol police that they were receiving gunfire on Water Street.
At around 3:17 p.m., officers from the Bristol Police Department responded to the town of Warren to assist in locating a suspect in the town of Warren who was classified as an active shooter. A description of the suspect was provided by the Warren Police Department and subsequently broadcast to the responding officers from Bristol. Around 3:17 p.m., as I stated, two Bristol police officers traveling in an unmarked patrol vehicle were headed to the initial scene in Warren. When these officers were on Water Street, they were using their lights and siren to move traffic to respond to the initial scene in Warren. In the area of Water and Sisson Street, one officer reported hearing a popping noise. At that point, the second officer in the vehicle looked to his left and observed a subject matching the description that was previously given to responding officers. The vehicle was then turned around, and one officer, the driver of the vehicle, exited the vehicle, at which point he immediately became under fire from a suspect who was standing in front of 135 Water Street. The officer then immediately took cover and returned fire. The exchange of gunfire happened, and at that point, officers continued to fire upon the suspect. Again, one Bristol police officer returned fire. After the exchange of gunfire was happening, the subject entered 135 Water Street in the alley. Other Bristol police officers, two other officers arrived, and together the group of officers approached the area of 135 Water Street. I must indicate at this point that according to the officer on scene, it was clearly that the subject had intent of harming the officer. When the officers arrived in the alleyway of 135 Water Street, the subject was on the ground, motionless. He was later pronounced deceased at the scene. The subject was identified as Michael Ouellette, age 37, of 135 Water Street. The medical examiner's office, the Rhode Island State Police, and also the Attorney General's office responded to the scene and assisted in the investigation. And at this point, the case is being investigated jointly by Warren, Bristol Police, the Attorney General's office, and the Rhode Island State Police. Any questions?
Is it believed that the suspect, Michael Ouellette, died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound?
At this point, the cause of death has not been determined by the medical examiner's office.
Did the gunfire that the police officers believe to hit him with a gunfire?
At this point, that's being investigated.
The initial altercation at the Italian club, they believe that subject, Mr. Ouellette, shot the other two individuals.
It appears to be at this time, but we're still looking into the matter, yes.
Do you know why?
We do not.
Did he work there, or did he have any association with the club?
He is associated with the club.
In what way?
I believe he's the president of the club.
Did he have any history with you guys? Did you have any recent calls about him?
Not to my knowledge at this time.
Did the two victims, Jason Furtado and Brian Remy, did they know each other? Were they related at all?
I don't know if Mr. Furtado knows Mr. Remy. I don't know.
And we understand, we've seen reports, Chief Souza, that he was a member of a long-standing firefighter in Warren. Did you know him personally? Can you speak a little bit about him?
Sadly, it was learned that Brian Remy was one of the victims. Mr. Remy is more than 40-year member of the department with 30 years as an assistant chief. He was a devoted member to the department, a lifelong resident of Warren, and much respected by the members of the department as a chief and as a member and as a person.
And he owned a business in town as well?
That's correct.
Was he off duty at the time? He wasn't?
Yes, he was.
Was he still currently, as of now, serving as an assistant fire chief?
He is. It's a volunteer department. He's a volunteer assistant chief, correct.
Tell us about it. What was he like? Tell us.
Just a dedicated member and a lot of years, a lot of history of serving the citizens of Warren, day, night, storms, so on. He was responded to the call to do what was needed. Just all around good person to have on the department, a good mentor of the members as well.
Was Mr. Ouellette known to the police department prior? Did he have any history?
We know of him, but we didn't have any history with the Warren Police, no.
What's the status of Mr. Furtado medically?
As far as we know, he was transported to the hospital with the injury, and that's all we know at this time.
Do you know which hospital?
Rhode Island Hospital.
Rhode Island.
Do you know if the injuries were considered life-threatening at this point?
He was hit near the abdomen, hip area, so that's all we know.
Is he still speaking with police?
We have not spoken to him since it was
Besides his initial comments at the scene?
correct.
When's the last time Warren had a homicide?
I don't think we've had a homicide. Well, we had the person we found in the sewer years ago.
But it's been a long time.
Been a long time. But nothing like this. Yeah, a good 10 plus years.
How many times was Mr. Furtado hit?
We believe just once.
Is there any more word as to what happened in the club? I mean, people are saying it was a fight, but it's kind of just shocking to members to hear about something like this. So is there any more storyline to that?
Yeah, like the major said, we're still looking into it and talking to witnesses and trying to find out exactly what happened. But
Is there anything the public can do to help right now?
I think just console the families of the deceased and show their respect.
Is there any video, surveillance video that you guys are looking at?
We are looking at buildings in the area or houses that may have the video that could assist
But
us.
anything inside the club, do they have any video?
They may have, yes. Yes.
Do you know if he got the gun, had the gun legally, if he purchased it legally?
We have not looked into that yet.
And you don't know when he got it, if he got it recently?
Correct.
Do you know why he had it in the club?
I do not.
What type of gun was it?
I believe it was a handgun.
And you said you had no or history with him, but knew of him. Is that just from?
Yeah.
It's a small town.
Yes.
Did he live at 135?
That's our understanding, yes.
What happens next? Is there anything for like funeral services for Mr. Remy? I know a lot of people want to show support for something like this.
We will meet with the family probably as soon as tomorrow and try to find their wishes, and we will honor them wishes proudly.
Chief, can we get the spelling of Mr. Remy's name?
Brian, B-R-I-A-N, last name Remy, R-E-M-Y.
Do you have the spelling of the other two names as well?
Mr. Ouellette is Michael Ouellette, O-U-E-L-L-E-T-T-E. And Mr. Furtado is Jason Furtado, and it's F-U-R-T-A-D-O.
And all from here in Warren.
Correct.
And was there anyone else injured or any, bullets going to any houses or anything like that?
No.
And how's the officer doing tonight?
The officer was uninjured, and he's doing well.
Do we know how many shots the officer fired?
We do not at this time. That's under investigation by the Rhode Island State Police.
And I'm sorry, you may have addressed this, but did the suspect shoot first at police?
That is correct.
And return fire?
That is correct. As the two officers in the unmarked car were driving north on Water Street, passing Sisson Street, one of the officer driving heard a popping noise, and that's when the officer turned around, exited the vehicle, and was immediately fired upon by the suspect. That name's not going to be released at this time, sir.
And the other one either?
Correct.
Are they on leave or anything like that? Is there any, for the sort of standard process there?
At this point, that'll be determined tomorrow morning.
And I'm sorry, I'm just trying to visualize. Were they in the same car or separate cars?
They were in the same car.
Okay, and the driver,
The driver is the officer that engaged Mr. Roulette. And while the gunfire was happening, there was actually a resident of Sisson Street that was driving up and approaching Water Street, and the second officer yelled to that female driver to exit the vehicle and run from the area.
We have Mr. Furtado's age again, please.
41.
anything else that you guys want to add? Obviously, you know, a lot of people are pretty shaken up tonight. This doesn't happen very often here. Any, you know, thoughts for the community as the family mourns, the community kind of settles down?
This was just an isolated incident. There is no other threat to our community.